for sure for us in this room, and we hope that the same for you all who have been patiently waiting. So yeah, give us a couple of seconds. We're gonna wait until we all gather here on our panel and then do some welcomes and introductions and what brought us to the desire to have a deeper dialogue, right, with one another. I'm pretty sure we've had conversations with family members in our own homes, but we want to go beyond that and open it up to the community. So bear with us a couple more seconds. Go ahead and gather yourselves, and a little housekeeping. I will do that now in regards to how we want to navigate Zoom. If you are able to utilize the chat, go ahead and do some well wishes there along the conversation. We will have a few opportunities along the way to open up for some dialogue, for some Q&A for you all, and for us to just enter into that. And we will let you guys know at that time in the segment when that will be. So please not hold your questions to the end, but just let them simmer as we open up the segment for that dialogue. And we will go right into it. So thank you once again for gathering with us and enter to a good, needed conversation about solidarity between our Black and Asian community members. Hopefully, not only in Spokane City, County, but we want to make it cross-pollinate around the world. So yeah, thank you for being here. What I'll do, we're in the mood right now. We're grooving. So I'll have our panelists introduce themselves again and speak on why they're here and what brought us to the conversation. So you'll hear from our panelists.
Can I unmute? So you just when I unmute, use the phone. This is your I don't be seen first.
We're told not script, we're told.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Ping Ping. I teach at Spokane Falls Community College. I teach sociology. I know my colleagues from SFCC are here. Thank you for being here. I am also an immigrant from China, from Guangzhou, China. Have been here for 20 years now. I'm a mother, a wife. I have 2 children. They're both here, Rosie, one panelist, and Pingbo Zhou, our son. My husband is here doing the just monitoring the cameras here. I'm also a commissioner for the Washington State Commission on Asian and Pacific American Affairs. The reason why I want to be a part of this, organizing this conversation of Black and Asian in solidarity is because last summer, since George Floyd was killed, I think we cannot avoid that one of the 4 officers who collectively killed him is from Asian American community. Tao Tao, that's his name. And since then, I would like to have a conversation between the 2 communities. Then, especially since January of 2021, Asian American, Pacific American were subject to the hate incidents and crime in daily basis. And so these are the reasons motivating me really want to start this conversation in our own community, Spokane here. Thank you all.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jada Richardson. I'm a high school senior, and I am a member of the Spokane NAACP Executive Committee, chair of the Chase Youth Commission, and I serve on OSBI's School Safety and Wellbeing Advisory Committee. The reason I am here is because, same as Dr. Ping, after the George Floyd events and the rise of anti-Asian hate crimes, I noticed anti-Blackness within social media and things like that, but I also noticed the Black community's response to that was not the best or wasn't as inclusive when it comes to collective change. And so I think it's important to kickstart a conversation on how we can support each other in efforts towards dismantling white supremacy and things of that nature.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Rosie. I'm Pinkley's daughter, and I'm currently a senior at Ferris High School. And I really wanted to, I guess maybe say some things I'm involved in. I'm actually part of the school's Black Student Union, and I'm also involved in a lot of organizations locally, like the Sunrise Movement and League of Women Voters. And I just really wanted to be a part of this because I personally see a lot of anti-Blackness in my own community, and I feel like there's just been lots of tensions historically between our two communities. And so we really need to start having the conversations to unite together, because I think we are really stronger together, and when we're together, that's when we can work towards, like Jane said, dismantling the systems in place that are harming both of our communities, like white supremacy. So that's why I want to do this, and now I'll pass it on to Pastor Sean.
Yeah, thank you, Rosie. My name is Pastor Sean Davis, and I am the senior pastor here at Jesus Answer Church. I'm also an employee of Spokane Public Schools, and I also consult and oversee a lot of the cultural clubs within the school district. Now, my why would mainly be, really focus on the importance of conversation. A lot of times we're highlighting definitely a lot of the issues that divide us, but we lack communication on trying to recognize the things that unite us. And my thing is, conversation brings awareness. Awareness is what drives action. And so it begins with things like this: having these courageous, uncomfortable conversations to be able to take a deeper dive into some of the whys behind the divisiveness. Even as our groups have been discussing, my main concern is the painfulness that it takes to be honest. That if we're ever going to bring healing and reconciliation, we have to be able to talk about the things that truly divide us. And a lot of times that makes people uncomfortable, but healing is painful. And that's my why. That's why I feel comfortable meeting with our students, with Dr. Ping, because there's open hearts to recognize that we can't keep this conversation on the surface. We want to take a deeper dive in order for us to take a higher rise. So thank you.
Wonderful. And my why is I am a community member. I heard quite a bit in not only the last 2 years, but last couple of months of just the harm that's been in our communities, our brothers and our sisters, in our Asian community, and of course in our Black community. And it's interesting how the roles have want to change the narrative, change the narrator. I want to be a part of that solution there. I want to be a part of the conversation of rewriting what should be, rewriting what lives and, relations we want to be involved in. So I'm here to dive deep. I'm here to lean in. I'm here to unlearn, to relearn, to rebuild, and make sure those who I'm connected with are introduced to a new language, introduced to the kind of world we want to live in, right? So there's an ownership that I'm taking with this, and I'm here just at the table to continue that conversation. So I'm grateful for you all again to be here with us this afternoon. Thank you for the panelists for sharing their lives as well. We're going to get a little deeper into some things that may even challenge you all as viewers, and I encourage you to remain engaged as you are introduced perhaps to certain things. We are going to, in the next couple of seconds, go ahead and show you guys a clip of a situation that took place in Los Angeles of a young girl and two cultures collided, not only from this video, but there's more around it. So go ahead and just engage, please lean in, and we'll go ahead and show a clip. I will go ahead and cue it up a bit here. And what the clip is going to be is a video of Latasha Harvins. Or it's going to be something else. The video's
in the United States, as we understand it, was built on the project of racialization, of separating, distinguishing, and valuing and devaluing people along lines of race and their proximity to or away from whiteness.
The struggle of Asians and African Americans are very different, and we're not trying to equate our experiences in any way. But we also need to remember that we've been linked in ways we don't often hear about.
These violent attacks against Asian Americans, it's also, I'm Black and Asian, so it's really disheartening. It's actually really traumatic to read stories like this. I just saw a really huge need for these two communities to come together because we're not each other's enemies. When you understand the history of everything, you kind of start to understand how you can move forward. Back in the 60s and 70s, I think they truly understood how important education was, and I think that's why they set up a lot of mutual aid, a lot of community support that involved educating.
The civil rights movement was highly influential amongst Asian American leaders who drew inspiration from Black freedom fighters. Likewise, when Japanese Americans were sent to detention camps during World War II, Black civil rights leaders tried to repeal the Emergency Detention Act. Cross-cultural activism blossomed as Asian American students rallied alongside Black student organizers and other ethnic groups as part of the Third World Liberation Fronts in the late 60s. This culminated in student strikes that led to equal education opportunities and the creation of ethnic studies programs. In 1978, it was Black people who called for the US to accept Indo-Chinese refugees and even paid for a full-page advertisement in the New York Times. Similarly, when Vincent Chin was beaten to death, Black activists like Jesse Jackson were part of the movement to call for justice for his murder.
Those who live, we must redefine the narrow so everybody knows everybody fits in the rainbow somewhere.
There was a photo I just found of Jesse Jackson holding my great auntie Lily Chin, comforting her. I remember every day that it was racial solidarity coalitions that made Vincent Chin named all across the country, that created federal legislation around hate crimes that didn't exist for people like my cousin.
It's because of the Black community and the civil rights movement that Asians then adopted and were beneficiaries of immigration and improved rates. And in terms of voting policies that were more immediate to us, in terms of interracial marriage that was now available to us, and that once again started from another community that was othered, that we were othered with.
Activists like Yuri Kochiyama and Grace Lee Boggs not only pulled insights from Black radical frameworks for Asian American liberation, but were also strong and active advocates for Black social justice movements. Yuri was so involved with Malcolm X's work that she was present at his assassination in 1965 and at the forefront of countless civil rights and social justice battles over the last 6 decades. Unfortunately, a notable schism occurred between the communities after the 1991 killing of Latasha Harvins.
Alright, so that was the video. discussion questions are just like, what did you learn from video that you didn't know before, and why do you think these kind of instances of solidarity in history often get erased? So I guess I can just start out, and I really love that video because it kind of highlights a lot of instances of solidarity in the past that have happened that often I feel like a lot of people don't know about, and it's not really taught, especially in like the education system. I've never, learned about any of that. I never learned about Yuri Kochiyama, Malcolm X, how they were very close. Learned none of that in school, and I think that's really damaging because maybe that makes people think that we've never really ever been in solidarity in the past, and we've never fought for each other. But that's not true because we've seen all these times in history, like with the Vincent Chin case, where Jesse Jackson and the Black community were so supportive of Lily Chin in her fight for Vincent's justice. Yeah. What are your thoughts?
I definitely agree with you. I think a lot of times media and education, they have this philosophy almost to, instead of highlighting how we've been united, they kind of make it so we shift blame on each other instead of focusing on the real issue. So a lot of people don't even know our unity came from white supremacy because your community became the subdivision of Black and white, and the middleman of these policy and law issues. And then my community has never been deemed the model minority due to law enforcement and all of these things. And so I think in order to keep this payroll of this payroll going for them, because the truth is they're making money off of our division. And it all comes down to economics in a sense. Like, as long as we are divided, these people in the office, these city leaders, these country leaders will not be making money. And so I think that's why you never learn about any of this, because greed is kind of motivating our division in a sense. And not our division with each other, but like those who are, it's almost like a game. And we're puppets, and there's like this master puppeteer, which is white supremacy. And in order for them to keep the power and keep the privilege, our communities have to be at odds. And so how do we rally together to dismantle that system as a whole? And that system as a whole looks like the education system, criminal justice system, policing, all of those things. So how do we rally together and say, hey, we can be allies, not allies, accomplices. We can get into this dirt together. And when we do, we see what happens when we do. But yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Gina. I really, what you said is really powerful. And just, what you said about like the division is, they want to have us divided because that's how they benefit, right? That's how the systems and the people in power. And I think, what's really kind of infuriating is looking in history and seeing how these divisions have come about. And when you look deeper, you really see that it's the system pitting us against each other. And that leads into kind of our next bit about specifically the Latasha Harless case, which Pastor Sean will talk much more in depth about, and about that case and really what was happening was the system pitting communities against each other. So, Pastor Sean.
Yeah, thank you, Rosie. So I want to give some context first to my personal lived experience when it comes down to the Latasha Harless case. So my father, coming from the South, even through that kind of sudden migration of blacks from the South, even going west, even specifically California, in the 40s. And through this transition, lot of African Americans took up residence in Los Angeles and Watts, California. Watts became more of the mecca of the Black community and began to disperse between the Compton Californians, the more South Central area. I want to give that background because even though in Los Angeles there has always been a presence, I'm going to say a community of our Korean Asian Americans, the thing is the true influx of our Asian community did not really take rise, I'm going to say, into Los Angeles until the 70s. And so after the 1965 Watts riot, and this is important to understand before we get to Latasha Harden's case, because the thing is our government, even though we were present since the 40s, our government was not allowing the Black community to be able to own stuff in their own communities. My father was a representative in the NAACP Los Angeles chapter, as well as one of the founders of what is called Manpower, a job development program to bring economics to the Black community. Our government would deny us loans to be able to own our own stores, own our own gas stations. And then when the Koreans began to move to our communities, they gave them what we felt like we deserved. Now, you may say, well, they're coming for the same American dream. They're coming to be able to work hard and provide for their families. Okay, but the truth of the matter is that each and every one of us was coming from a place of struggle, a place of oppression, and looking again for that piece of the pie, as one would say. But the thing is just like in a family structure, when you begin to favor one child over the other child, it's easy for the child that is being neglected of certain privileges to begin to have animosity against the child that seems like they're being favored by the parents. So if you can imagine with me, if you will, that's what our government did, is they gave the Koreans something that we felt like we deserved. And now, as two oppressed communities, it caused us to have animosity against the Korean community because of that. Now you're in a position where you're able to open up stores in our community. So as a Black community, we have to shop, through you. We're the consumers, which means that we're always remaining in debt while the Asian community profits. Now, I'm only highlighting that because a lot of times we're looking at, there's a heightened of African American, even hate crimes against Asian American. But I'm under the persuasion that if we keep on addressing the symptoms and not the causes, we're going to keep having the same symptoms. So this is why I want to go backwards first to recognize that there's a reason why the Black community have this animosity. There's a reason why, because when we would come into now their stores, we're treated as criminals. We're automatically looked at as somebody that's going to come in and steal from them. Our women in their salons having to their hair products from them, and sometimes being mistreated, and at the same time, even in the Koreans' own language, speaking very negatively and humanizing even our Black women while they're doing their nails. This is a real thing in our community. But yet, we don't own our own salons. Yet, we don't own our own hairdressers. We don't own our own stores. So guess what? We still have to shop from you, which has now created all this animosity. Here comes Latasha Harden, this young 15-year-old girl who walks again, and this is 1991, who walks into a store on the way to school to buy more shoes. Okay? And you can see it even from the video clip, and I'm speaking this because I was there, as far as in Los Angeles when this happened. Now, you see it from the video clip, again, that she's carrying her backpack, so she's reaching into her backpack actually to get her money, not to put the orange juice in the backpack as though she's trying to steal it. But the Korean lady felt like that's what she was doing. She was trying to steal from her. You see her coming up to the counter, and therefore she's already accusing her verbally, and then she grabs her hand. And so you see Latasha pull her hands away from her to break her loose. And so there goes the tussle. So of course, Latasha is fighting back in a sense of like, okay, let me go. So she sits even the orange juice down, walks away to leave the store. And then that's when, again, the Korean American shot her in the back of the head and she died. Now, that wasn't enough because here it is, the black community is already upset, you know what I mean? The protest is beginning, the animosity here was already there because now it makes it feel like, okay, even black lives don't matter to you neither. Okay? If you kid one of our young girls like this. And what happened is it goes to court and everybody want to tell you, let the system take care of it, be patient. Biddy don't tell the whole story.
Right.
Okay, we're going to try to trust the system then. It goes to court, and then she is found guilty, okay, for the murder. But it took a white judge who came behind the verdict and to say that, yes, we received the verdict, but she's not fit for prison. Okay, who is fit for prison?
Right.
She's not fit for prison. So guess what? We're going to give her probation and going to give her a $500 fine for the murder of this young girl. So you can see where the black community, feeling like the Asian community has been privileged by the white community to actually be the oppressors.
Right.
But the truth of the matter is that they were used, if forgive me for this term, as like a puppet on the string, while white supremacy is pulling the strings, to simply continue to keep their knees on our necks. So my commitment to this conversation is to recognize that we must expose the cause if we're going to address the effects. And we have to have the courage and the strength to be honest about it and to recognize that the truth of the matter is that it's really not a black and Asian thing. It's really systemic racism that is oppressing us all. Thank you.
And then I'd also like to add to that, Latasha Harlins was accused of stealing orange juice. And when she died and her body hit the floor, $2 were found in her hand. Yeah.
Thank you, Pastor Sean and Janice. I had a comment. I really feel this is you're my university. I'm an immigrant from China, so, and my PhD degree was not earned in the United States. It's from Hong Kong, the Chinese University of Hong Kong. So I really have a lot to learn, but let me just put it this way. I am going to share with you my observation of, because Pastor Sean just shared his life experience in the 1990s in Los Angeles, how the systematic racism puts these two communities pit against each other, and it's totally just opened my eyes, not just today, before we planned for this meeting, I have listened to his sharing, but today, more details. Thank you for that. For me, I would like to share with our audience, not audience, you as the participants of the conversation today. After George Floyd was killed, how was the anti-blackness was prevalent, not just was, and still is prevalent in the community that I call my community, which is the Chinese immigrant group here in Spokane. After George Floyd was killed in such an inhumane way, the Chinese immigrant in Spokane has a 360 people's WeChat group. It's very unique, just like Chinese people's Facebook. Okay, it was invented in China, but all Chinese overseas are using WeChat. Yeah, so it was very convenient to use And we exchange our ideas, information, like where has, in the pandemic, which restaurant has the fresh vegetables or meat. Coming today, just go, yeah. The restaurant owners will say, yeah, come to my restaurant to get these fresh dishes. I noticed that after George Floyd was killed, only 2 other people besides me post something in this group that George Floyd was killed in such a shocking manner. But nobody else, only myself, was expressing my sadness, and I cannot believe a human can be killed in such a way. 9 minutes, 9 seconds, pressed down on his knees while he was saying, I cannot breathe. I cannot sleep well after he was killed. So did my family, my daughter, Rosie, as she will speak more. And family of 4, Pingo was here last year. 4 of us went to the protest, peaceful protest. Thousands of people in Spokane show up. I can count, besides our family of 4, I met 3 other friends from the Chinese immigrant community here. And in general, I don't see many Asian faces besides Chinese immigrants. So, and then we share the pictures from the peaceful protest with our WeChat group. That's 360 people. You know what, they were just, nobody said, wow, yeah, thank you for being there. No, nothing like this. They were just asking, was that safe? We said, yeah, it is safe. But then the Spokane's peaceful protest turned to like a looting in a Nike store in downtown, as you may all have known. But that was not done by the peaceful protesters. It was by an outside group. I heard from NAACP leader to remind me before we even went to the protest that be careful. People said the Proud Boy might be showing up. So when people kind of just focus on the Nike store rioting and say, oh, don't go to downtown tonight, it's curfew, it's not safe. I just feel so, disappointed and upset. I was just immediately said something on the WeChat message. I said, can you avoid racism? Because is that George Floyd make you in danger, or it is racism? Can you avoid racism? Even though you don't go to downtown today, can you avoid racism everywhere in this country, in this city? And then I said, I heard it was done by Proud Boy. It could. I heard the news. I heard somebody say it could be done by the Proud Boy. And then someone in that group suddenly replied back, mocked me, saying that, oh, what a conspiracy theory. That means she was on the side of the Proud Boy. And when someone brought up it is done by the Antifa, she didn't say anything. So this is a person very outspoken about my peaceful protest in that group. And then I noticed that people were sympathized with Officer Chauvin, who knelt down George Floyd. They said, he was just doing what he was supposed to do, which is a police officer, how he treated with a criminal. What? I thought, criminal using a $20 counterfeit money, and that he deserves to be died that way? So I just felt, I'm very puzzled why we came from the same country, received the same education, including the university education, and when we are here, we have such a huge differences in terms of how we perceive this tragedy, this thing. Yeah, so this is my wondering about I just wanted to share with you that we as the Chinese immigrant from China or Taiwan, Hong Kong, other places speaking Chinese, that identify yourself as Chinese in this country, that we are a spectrum. Just like people's gender identity could be a spectrum, our political views, our views about Black Americans in this country is a spectrum. We are not the same, and I hope you get the idea from my sharing that because people usually think, you all look the same. You all look the same. So, and you must think the same, value the same thing, have the same preference. Yeah, I think we just have the same preference over the food. Sadly, yeah, that's it. Our religious belief, our political views are very different. And this is a puzzle I will always want to study. Why? What makes this difference? What's wrong? Something wrong with our education from the country that we came from. And that is something deeper. And I know it's a shame to say this in this kind of the public space, but I think we can only address the system thing, not the symptom thing. That we do carry anti-Black prejudice even when we were in China. We were whitewashed. This is a term I learned in the United States, and it's pretty interesting term. Yeah. Thank you.
I actually wanted to hear more about the whitewash, right? Like, and there's so much that we have been taught in the land of our America, just experiences, right? And again, it's the education behind it that we have to tear down. Thank you for the panelists for even sharing their experiences. Of course, Pastor Sean Davis with being in the exact same city of what took place and how it was just shared in regards of a life worth $500, a life worth easy to take away, right? Because it's just what the education and what media has pinned up against our minds. And I would love to challenge you all to even dig deep into, why do we look at certain situations this way? And who's been behind it? Even as Pastor Sean mentioned, who's the puppet behind it that's pinning these two communities up against one another? And let's not just stay there in the emotions of what it has created as division in our communities, but have the strength and the courage to go beyond that to say, okay, we both have been experiencing the exact same harm from a land that we call home, that we are citizens of, that we pay taxes to. We have all experienced this in these two communities, the exact same. And I will be the one to say, and this is just what my takeaway has been, it's so interesting to see similarities across the vibes, in the sense that I know my oppression because I live it. But to hear my brother and sister in Asian communities that echo some of the same trauma that I am trying to live out of and trying to remove myself from, it's interesting that we should, even as Rosie mentioned, we're stronger together. There is some great divides that we could dismantle from that. So we're going to go into some discussion, some commenting, and dialogue. And thank you for even adding your comments to the chat. Our production team has been sending me over some clips of what you guys have been sharing. So thank you for that. I will acknowledge a few comments, and then we'll go into a conversation to just get some more dialogue going. So one in particular that we have seen in the chat of a comment is, it's very interesting, right? Like, give me one moment here, there's quite a bit, so thank you all for chatting there. From Philip Tyler, the thought that some of our Asian American brothers and sisters are getting more than we do is what perpetuates the one group on top of another group on the bottom. So it's a troll behind that on how it's pinned up against one another. This is a model minority versus the criminal minority image that has been voiced or even imposed upon all by the dominant society. No group is either the model or the criminal. We must not allow the narrative to continue. And a comment that resonated with that as well. Well said, Phil Tyler. Model or criminal stereotypes mask the within group variations, and grievances are often gaslighted because of this model minority perception. Thank you for even having that conversation there, leading from that is a wonderful segue. A question that we would like to introduce to our conversation. I'll say it not only because the panel will have this discussion, but we really hope that someone will unmute themselves, even chime in on the chat if you like to do it that way. We'd much rather you talk. And we do know we have this mic that you are able to hear. We're going to continue on with this. So a question I'd like to pose right now is along the lines of contributing to an increasing number of hate crimes against Asian Americans, specifically elderly. Why is it that? Why is there a perpetual energy in our society when it comes down to hate crimes against our Asian American elderly communities? And what's been pinned around that is by African Americans. So is that something that the media has been painting us? Is that a reality? Like what has been that conversation and that narrative behind what we hear when we make reading? So what are some thoughts, even leading up to our conversation right now, if you guys have any thoughts around this or any questions, we want to make sure we open it up to you all. And even to the panelists, if you guys have any thoughts as well, we could pass the mic here.
Yeah, so again, if you have any thoughts on this question, please feel free to unmute. And another question that we have is kind of looking at both sides, right? So what has, how have Asian Americans our own, negative perception of the Black community, stereotypes that they steal, they're violent, lazy, all of those negative, horrible stereotypes. How have those kind of been reinforced in the Asian community, and how have those really led to some physical and systemic manifestations of violence against the Black community? I think this one really goes back to Tasha Harlan's case because that Korean shop owner, she had a very negative perception in her mind, and that's what led to her carrying out this act of violence and murder. And I feel like that's just going back to, again, these, how we kind of came up with these stereotypes and how the Asian community has, sometimes I think they really feed into the stereotypes that white people put out, because they want to seem they want to get as close to white as possible, and that means being against Black people. And so they kind of sometimes feed into this model minority. And I think this is again what my mom was talking about before. Why are so many Chinese Americans so anti-Black? I think a lot of it goes back to them kind of wanting to enjoy the benefits of being the model minority, and because obviously it is giving them benefits, and they don't recognize that it's harmful, and so yeah.
Hi, I just want to add something on the model minority. I'm not sure if every participant in this meeting already know before you came to this meeting. The model minority was this was coined by a sociologist. His name is William Peterson. In 1966, he wrote an article for the New York Times magazine. The title of the article is Success Story, Japanese American Style. So he pointed out the family structure and the cultural emphasis on hard work allowed Japanese Americans to overcome the discrimination against their group and achieve a measure of success. Since then, this term was widely used by the mainstream society, especially the politicians, when the main purpose was to blame the people who were not so successful in the economic dimension. So the main target this term is wanted to target is African Americans especially. So this term really, and another that I should point out that another implication or expectation implied in this concept is that besides you are economically successful, your educational degree is much higher than the average American, and you are expected to be quiet, to be submissive, to be just be appreciative of what you have been given in this the land of freedom and opportunity, and don't speak up, okay, and don't be too visible. If you're doing too well, that means you're too visible. Then you're kind of stepping on the line of the most superior group, which is the white people. So I would just like to add this on this model minority concept.
Thank you, Ping Ping. It speaks right into some comments that we have even in our chat, right? You guys are engaging, and thank you for that. One that stood out in regards to my minority is from an individual named Allie, and she mentioned this, I believe her pronouns are she, her, so she mentions, thank you, Ping Ping, for speaking on the whitewashing that Asians experience. For multiracial white and Asian folks like my family, we're encouraged by both our white and Asian family members to identify more strongly with our whiteness, and that separates us even further from our history of solidarity with the Black community. And it speaks even to what our panelists were speaking about in regards to there's a level of benefits behind being closer to the identifying feature, if you will, of whiteness, right? So if the world is to become successful and take care of what I'm a steward over, it's there's a resource here. And as much as I have an understanding or an uncomfortability, the more I'm focused and leaning over to success, I'm leaving another part of me mentally that you could see what's going on in communities, even those who may relate more to a biracial background, but the whiteness is where that privilege comes, where those resources come. So it pins us sometimes up against ourselves. And that's a struggle there too. So there is a hand, and I'm not sure if the hand is still raised in our chat, but I believe we do have someone who would like to unmute themselves and chime in. So yes, go for it, and we'll keep right on this. And I believe there's still a Tyler who wanted to speak, so go for it.
Good afternoon. I'd like to say first, thank you for putting this together, particularly makes me understand our young folks, Rosie and Jada. But to your question, Terry, I think what we're dealing with in order for us to get beyond is what I call the three lines: ignorance, ideology, and iconography.
you, though, for that. Even when it speaks to, you had some meat there, right? So what stood out quite relatively, is in regards to the ignorance behind it. There were some clips that I was not aware of until 2 years ago, and I'll be quite frank with you all, because it's just what's pushed out there. And it could be an area of mine as well, but what I'm getting to is if there's a level of ignorance behind it, and Philip even mentioned it, which is a loving introduction, you could learn. There's still something that you could do about that, and it's to learn about it. If you value it, and if you value your brothers and sisters, and those that you are citizens with, are even connected with humanity. Humanity still connects us. So if something has sparked you, even from this conversation now, the videos, the conversations, even the young girl who lost her life, do your research, because it's not in our curriculum. It's not in the books. Media does not talk about this. We search high and low to dig out some clips, just to show. So thank you for bringing that point out in regards, like, if there is any layers of ignorance behind that, don't stay there and feel offended by that. Lean in and take that deeper dive to learn more, so we can add more to this conversation. I do want to open it up to see if there's any dialogue we want to engage in on our panel, and then those who are still in Zoom, go ahead and use that chat, or just raise your hand, because we can go ahead and call you out by name and have you speak, because we prefer to hear from you than miss you in the chat.
Yeah.
So we'll open it to our panelists and get more dialogue.
Jada, did you have some comments that you wanted to make on the mountain, or you how it impacts?
Oh yeah. Sorry, I didn't know. But yeah, I did. And I think Mr. Tyler pointed that out. We have this myth of a model minority and a criminal minority. Yeah. And if you tell somebody something, there comes a point in time where they're going to believe that that's what they are. Yeah. That's human nature. If you tell me I have black hair, I'm gonna eventually believe I have black hair. And that plays out a great playing field for that will be our education system, where you have educators, often white, sometimes black, encouraging black students to be like their Asian peers, in a sense of, because I'm a black student, I can't take this challenging class, or I can't read this book, but instead I have to be compared to someone else. And I think, I'm not a model minority, and I'm not very close to whiteness, if you look at me. But there's some safety in a white space, in being able to identify with that. That's safe to be in, systemically and historically, for our country. So when people do buy into this model minority idea, we can't blame them, because whiteness is equivalent to safety where we're at. And so I think a lot of times it's easy to say, well, they don't want to do this, they're this, they're so. Well, you have to think about why they want to do that. If whiteness equals safety, would you not want to, would you not want to be white either? And I think for a lot of black people, younger ones especially, we've all been in that space. I wanted to be Sleeping Beauty, okay? There's no way that was ever gonna happen. But I wanted to be her because she was the standard of what beauty and class was for young girls. And so that's just how I view model minority. Like, that's a standard people set for people. It's not accurate, but if that allows someone some sort of safety in a sense, or protection, we can't get mad at people for chasing, that dream in a sense. It's not healthy at all, because then it creates this sort of, and I have had to check my biases. I have to check my biases on this all the time. When I generalize, all the Asians I meet are like smart. Like, I feel like people would be lying if they've never made that generalization. I know, and you may not want to admit it, but I know for a fact everyone has had that thought before. Yes. But if that's all you know, I think, and Mr. Tyler talked about that too. If that's the first encounter you meet with someone, you're gonna generalize that group. So for when it comes to school, Rosie made a huge point a few months back on how our school system erases Asian history. And do they do it with intention? No, they do it because they see Asian as white, which is why I talked about it's become a subdivision of black and white. And so how do we bring representation to that in a sense, and also bring understanding, and also when we like go to understand this concept of like why do these people think they're better than us, understand that historically whiteness is just what everyone should aspire to be. And then also historically, a lot of that comes from black people. This is a fun fact, okay? I'm a fun fact person. In the 1800s, when the 3/5 rule was abolished, black people were never presented the opportunity to identify as white, unless you were white passing. Other communities of color were able to identify as white, so there also stems a little bit of resentment there. Like, in the eyes of the law, you're white, but I'm not, so you're going to be believed over me. And so, I don't know, just coming out of these conversations, just with a sense of understanding, and also knowing your facts too. That's important, knowing your facts, and do not listen to CNN or Fox. Please don't. It's imperative.
Yes. Wow. Yes. Thank you for that, Jared. That just like I think when you said like near the modern minority, in a sense, it's offering this sense of like safety,
Right.
And protection. Like I had never really thought of it that way before. So yeah, thank you for that. And I have so much to say, but I'll try to keep it kind of compact. So when you talk about like the like economically, I think we can all agree that like we see that many like East Asians are economically well off, have high degrees of education, and what's interesting is ties into the minority as well. It's interesting because a lot of people don't know this, but the 1965 Immigration Act, that was first of all, that was actually like kind of a direct result of the civil rights movement even, and this Immigration Act was created, and Immigration Act only allows some certain professions from like Asia to immigrate to America, and so what we saw was a large influx of Asian Americans who do have like college educations, and they have like these degrees that can get them good jobs and stuff, and so that was actually kind of leading to again this whole like model minority thing, because people started seeing Asian as they just view them as like very economically well off and doing well, educated, and I think within the Asian American Pacific Islander community, there's so many subgroups, like many Southeast and South Asians, Pacific Islanders. These communities, a lot of them actually are not economically well off, and they don't enjoy the privileges that many East Asian communities may have. And so the minority myth is harming them as well, because it makes people think that they don't need any help, they don't need any resources. And so, yes, and then one other thing about the minority myth is, like my mom had mentioned before, of just really how it was created. And I learned recently that it was actually also like really related to the civil rights movement and just these calls for more civil rights. And what happened was like the Soviet Union and some other international communities, they looked to the U.S., and this was following the Second World War. They looked to the U.S. and they saw, like Jim Crow and these abuses of human rights, really. And they said, basically, I'm acting like I'm them. Okay, so they said, America, look at yourself, look at all of your issues, how racist you are. And then America said, well, we have these Asian American communities though who have experienced racism, but they're better now. They've overcome. And so why can't the Black community do that? And so that was kind of really what fueled this model minority myth. And it's it's so, like, I think a lot of people don't recognize that it was just, again, advancing white supremacy and was very strategically created and strategically used now.
And also to Rosie's point, I think it's super important to recognize how public policy, reflects this model minority myth. It would be so amazing if we could say, like, yes, these politicians and these laws work for everyone, but we know public policy, no matter where it's carried out, is a result of xenophobia and anti-Blackness. We know this for a fact. And so how do we go about that? Because it's great to be allies, individual allies. When we protest, we do it together. When we do this, we do it together. But we also know that in order to truly go about this justice and equity that we're talking about, something has to change in the government sector. There was a huge response. I will not say it was all positive to the anti-Asian hate bill that was passed, because the Senate refuses to pass the anti-lynching law. So when we talk about like how these things work, the way that we rally for everyone else, we have to rally for Black people in the same way. Not saying that one is better than the other, one deserves justice in other, but until we are all being served by our, whether it's our judicial system or whatever, until we're all being served this equity that we are promised, because that's the creed of the United States, none of it really counts. Because as long as, and we know this with the civil rights movement, when Black Americans rally together, social movements happen, whether that be the LGBTQ movement happened, Marsha Jones did that, all of these things. When Black people rally together and start these liberation movements, everyone benefits. And so how do we create a space where Black people benefit from the rallying that we've done, and how do Black people benefit with the help of other people? And so
So good. We do see the chimes in the chat and the hands being raised, so thank you for that. And it's building, right? So I'm hoping you guys are feeling that as well. I will make acknowledgments of some that we have seen in the chat, and we'll go right into some hands that we've seen raised. One comment was from Mark Carlos. And thank you for sharing this truth. Thank you for being vulnerable to share this, because it sparks, right? And it starts from our own selves first. So you mentioned I never knew about the history of the Asian American and African American communities in the civil rights movement. I hope our schools acknowledge our shared heritage, histories, and celebrate it. We need to take the narrative back as communities of color and fight for each other, not fight each other. So thank you for that. And I do see the hands here, and also I believe Jennifer Day mentioned, I agree. I am learning so much that I never knew before. We need to make the information more available. And we are going to share the link to the clip that we showed you all earlier on, so please see that. It was going to be in that chapter too, so that will be coming. And also, Phil Tyler mentioned, I'm for truth, no matter who tells it. I'm for justice, no matter who it is for or against. I'm a human being first and foremost. And as such, I'm for whoever or whatever benefits humanity as a whole, and that's Malcolm X. So thank you for sharing that. And I believe we do have two hands. Carla, I believe your hand was up first. And following that, we are going to have another individual who's going to come forth, and that is the name of Sean. Lisa. So thank you. So go ahead, Carla, you want to unmute yourself and go ahead and ask us your question or your comment. We see you on our end.
Oh, okay, very good. Thank you all for doing that first. I wanted to kind of, to Phil's point, try to anchor our thinking and not being so locked into And sometimes I put in this house, okay? That's the first point. The second one has to do with the system itself, of racism or whiteness or the civil rights system itself. That it is itself a construct that serves its purpose. And so when you put something in place, then you have opposites, right? Whiteness or black. And then you have the spectrum of everyone in between. And if you put whiteness as the goal, then then we will have what we have. So I don't know what it looks like, but I just need for all to be, aware. So we can see what the real roots of these things are. So things come up, you can identify it like, whether the system is media or if it's policy or if it's, whatever it is. You can take a moment, take a breath, take a pause, and evaluate it. That's what we need. We need more thinking and reflection, and then we can put this into action. So I love this. Let's keep it up, babe. Okay, that's all.
Thank you. So that's all. We could stay here for a while. Thank you for sharing that too. And yeah, we'll go to Sean as well. So if you are in the chat, if you're ready, Sean, go ahead and unmute yourself. And we'll take your question, your comment.
Hi everybody, I just want to thank you all for your contribution. I want to see the younger generation really to step up and take initiative to really address this issue.
even the apology, and I even shared this to you. I'm grateful for the gift of today. I'm grateful for the gift of today, that what we do from this moment forward, that's the moment, right? Like, whatever gets you to today, let's build bridges, let's create community, let's continue dialogue and dive deeper into that. Like, these are the things that we're able to do even as we gather here today. So I hope that this conversation does not begin and end here. There's a lot of work to be done. We have not even scratched the surface. Our chat has been going up. Thank you all for chiming in. I know there's a few of you all who had to leave. We thank you for even staying with us. We are a little over our time, but we wanted to make sure we value the content that we're trying to share. So I will once again acknowledge you all. We will put that link in the chat so you guys can see the clip that we shared with you all earlier this conversation. And if I can even do a little challenge, do some research. So hopefully you will see another invite, some kind of way, some kind of platform to continue this conversation. And then you can bring what you have learned here. You can bring what you have, introduce yourself to your families and your spheres of influence, and do some research, because deep research, might I say, because of course it's not readily available to us. We will have to do some digging. And if it's worth it, we will dig deep, right? So go ahead and do some research, look out for some more information on how we continue this conversation. I'm going to open it back up to our panelists to give any final thoughts, share any final feelings that they have, and what this space has done to us. So thank you for our team behind us as well, and thank you all again for being here and giving us some
was a 15-year-old black girl who was shot in the back by a Korean.
Open this up to our panelists, and I'll just go ahead and pass them around. So Jada, and then I'll find someone else.
Rosie, sorry.
Okay, Rosie's going. Okay. Yes, that works.
Okay, first, I just want to thank everybody again for coming and being a part of this conversation. Sean, I want to thank you for even showing that vulnerability, transparency, as we're talking about moving forward. You said a key thing is that it has to begin with acknowledgement. And I think that's the greatest thing that we've struggled with here, even in this country. The inability to simply be able to acknowledge, again, what has been done. It's part of what we try to even highlight when it comes down even to our Native Americans, our indigenous community, and doing land acknowledgement. In other words, we're trying to bring truth to bear by acknowledging, again, who are the origins of this, again, land and country. So it is when it comes down to, again, racism in this country. It's been the greatest thing that have attempted to be denied, that it does not exist. And so, Sean, you spoke that very truth to power, that we have to do some true self-reflection, and let it begin with us simply acknowledging the roles that we have played to be able to perpetuate, again, racism towards one another. So I just want to say thank you, especially to Jada and to Rosie. This really began with them as raising student voices, and this is what I want to continue to encourage. If we have other students, again, that are part of this call, throughout, again, our school district, we want to encourage this as they're saying that this is not a one-off. And so I would hope that a lot of our students will get behind this, and so that next time, let's have simply our young voices, that generation that is able to, push this through to carry us to a place of true reconciliation. So thank you, Jada, and thank you, Rosie.
I just want to, again, thank everybody so much for coming. I'm really grateful that I was able to be a part of this, and I just think it's so important, especially right now, to have these kind of conversations and to build these relationships, because I honestly don't think that, at least in Spokane, I don't think there's ever been any really trying to bring the Black and Asian communities together. I think, honestly, I think what we're doing here is pretty historic. So I'm glad that we're all part of that, and we should be very, very glad that you're, participating and being a part of this as well. And I, again, just want to echo essentially that this is not thank you all so much again, and we'll stay in touch for sure.
I would like to echo everything Rosie. You said a barbecue. I would like to echo everything Rosie said. Thank you all for coming and especially just supporting our young people, because I don't know if everyone knows this, but Spokane has youth that are doing amazing things, both locally and statewide. So that's super cool to see. But also, I just want to leave with this quote that I kind of live by, which is "good trouble." And I think it's super important that no matter what area you're functioning in, that you're causing good trouble. And so just everyone being here was a step towards this good trouble. And so that's my favorite thing. So thank you all for coming.
Thank you so much. Good trouble is such an inspiring word. I think from a so-called being perceived as a model minority background, it is something that I would love to embrace it. Good trouble, because what I'm doing in my own community caused so many troubles to them. They ostracize me because I am doing something like Black Lives Matter movement, advocacy for the BLM, for the George Floyd, movement. So I would really like to thank Rosie, Jada, our youth leaders, that two of you are both seniors. That you're going to graduate from high school and going to your university, starting your new chapter in your life soon in the fall. And I'm just so sad but happy for both of you and proud of both of you. And I hope you leave a so-called legacy here that will have youth community following what you are doing and keep the torch going on. And we adults here, Pastor Sean, I'm so glad that we become friends because we are planning this meeting. I just feel like if I could know you 15 years earlier, then I would be a different person too. But it's not too late to start to be a different person.
Yes.
Yeah, and Terry, also we just so touching by all of your friendship, your genuine, bringing things on the courage, in the courage way. I would also like to emphasize what Charity said on the chat box. Charity is the co-chair of the API Heritage event, which will be on June 12th in the centerpiece. It's a west side long plaza in a place in the valley, and please go to check out in the Facebook. It's called Spokane's United We Stand, and I'm part of that group too, the starter of the group. We would just like to let our African American community know that we are standing with you in solidarity. This is what Charity emphasized in her chat too, and she and I welcome you to participate in that event, June 12th. And I also have bring some the poster for that event. It's a beautiful pineapple with an eye opening, which means we're not going to silence anymore, and we are speaking up as Asian American people. And we are, so thank you for giving us the courage to speaking up, our African American community and friends.
We as a Black community are also standing with the Asian American community.
And that is exactly what this is here. I kid you not, from my perspective, right? A lot has been new of what I was not previous, knowledge of. I didn't have previous knowledge of, and to things, statement, it's never too late. It's never too late. I don't know what the demographics are in our chat right now, but if you're here, you're here. You're alive, you're breathing, you're well. So we could dig deep now. So I'm fully challenging myself to continue this conversation wherever I go, and serve some good trouble. Why not? Why not serve some good trouble? What do we have to lose? But thank you once again for everyone who are here. Thank you for the panelists. I absolutely learned a lot about my own history. So I really want to tap into some unearthed places. If you have learned a lot about your own history, that's beautiful. And if you are willing to unlearn some things about your own history in regards to what's been fed to us, that is not the full truth. Let's dive into that as well. Thank you all once again. We wish you have a wonderful evening. Thank you. Please keep your eyes out and attend to any events, any programs you're able to go to. And we hope to meet you all again here. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You know, I know we're out.
We'll pick your.
You know how I know we're church people? Because you started talking about
Kim, come in. Kim. And so, what is the name of this young person?
Terrell.
Kim, come in, please.
Rail.
Thank you for the support.
Okay.
One more.
Oh, one and two.
Stand up so you
Stand up.
Stand up in solidarity.
Oh, this is great.
So anyway, you'll be the next, okay. I will take.
Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, one more. 1, 2, 3. Good.
Okay, Donnie, you come in. I will take
Oh,
picture.
yeah. Hand in hand, please.
Donnie was just hand in hand. Just get in here.
This way?
Yeah. Good. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I was really laughing. I was like, we really did go to church.
So,
Say that. Say